So, chapter 3. So, one of the first questions in the chapter 3 section is about how Maddie is associated with light and warmth. And so, what we have is Xena being associated with coldness and kind of oldness and unfriendliness, even to her husband. And Maddie is the opposite. And we see that right at the beginning of the chapter. So, this is one of those mini flashbacks where it's morning, because we know from the beginning of the chapter, but Ethan's thinking about last night. And what he talks about is the light that was coming underneath the doorway to his bedroom. And the light was from Maddie's room, which was across the hallway, across the little landing at the top of the steps. This is probably a pretty small house. And it says, as he lay there, he could hear Maddie moving about in her room, and her candle, sending its small ray across the landing, drew a scarcely perceptible line of light under his door. So we've all been in a dark room, and we've all seen light coming underneath the door. So that's pretty easy for us to imagine. And it says, he kept his eyes fixed on the light until it vanished. Then his room grew perfectly black, and not a sound was audible but Xena's asthmatic breathing. Okay? Then it goes on to talk about how he feels the warmth of Maddie's shoulder still against his shoulder. Wow, right? Ethan is not really, he's not really doing super well in terms of maintaining his composure, I think, at least on the inside. He's doing a great job on the outside, but it's the inside that I think we're interested in here. So then right away, this is page 25 in the Skinny book, we learn about Maddie's backstory. So it says that Maddie Silver was the daughter of a cousin of Zenobia Frome's, who had inflamed his clan with mingled sentiments of envy and admiration by descending from the hills to Connecticut, where he had married a Stamford girl and succeeded to her father's thriving drug business. Now, every year I have students ask me if he was like a drug dealer. He was not. He owned a pharmacy. Okay, so that's all that means. Okay, nothing sinister. And then we find out that the cousin had, it says he was a man of far-reaching aims. So apparently he had made some bad investments, and it says he had died too soon to prove that the end justifies the means. So in other words, what happened was he had taken money from investors and was going to turn it into this like big lucrative kind of expansion maybe of his drugstore, and it didn't work out. He died really young, unexpectedly. And so after he died, they had this huge funeral for him, and then they found out that they should not have had a huge funeral for him. They couldn't afford it. And it says his wife died of the disclosure. So Maddie's mother followed her husband, Maddie's dad, in death really quickly. Died of embarrassment. And Maddie, it says, at 20, was left alone to make her way on the $50 obtained from the sale of her piano. So we're talking about $50, which is more than it is now in 1886, but still not a huge sum. And then it says, for this purpose, her equipment, though varied, was inadequate. So equipment means, in that sentence, it means like her abilities, I guess, her marketableness. And it says that she could trim a hat, so that means put a ribbon on a hat, make molasses candy, recite Curfew Shall Not Ring Tonight, which apparently is a poem, and play The Lost Chord and a potpourri from Carmen. When she tried to extend the field of her activities in the direction of stenography and bookkeeping, her health broke down, and 6 months on her feet behind the counter of a department store did not tend to restore it. Her nearest relations had been induced to place their savings in her father's hands. And though, after his death, now here's a part where you're going to pay attention to the tone. After his death, they ungrudgingly acquitted themselves of the Christian duty of returning good for evil by giving his daughter all the advice at their disposal. They could hardly be expected to supplement it by material aid. I hope you can see that that's sarcastic, okay? Because what the author is saying, what Edith Wharton is telling us, is that these people they felt like they were scammed by Maddie's dad, the owner of the drugstore. And so therefore, when he died and the daughter was left penniless, I mean, she had to sell her piano, for Pete's sake. She had nothing. They felt like they had discharged their Christian duty by just giving her some advice, like, go get a job. Good luck. Okay? So that's definite sarcasm right there. Okay? Now, she continues sort of in that sarcastic bent through the rest of that paragraph. So let me read that to you. It says, but when Zenobia's doctor recommended her looking about for someone to help her with the housework, the clan, so these are Zena's relatives, instantly saw the chance of exacting a compensation from Maddie. So they want to make Maddie pay for her father's death, I guess. I mean, bad business decision maybe, but anyway, Maddie is at fault somehow in this group of people's mind, at least. It says Zenobia, though doubtful of the girl's efficiency, was tempted by the freedom to find fault without much risk of losing her, and so Maddie came to Starkfield. And so then it keeps talking through and talks about how really Xena could treat Maddie any way she wanted to, because Maddie didn't have any place to go. Okay, so she was just like stuck. Okay, so I don't know. It doesn't sound like a very good situation for Maddie. So if you want to turn the page with me, what's going to happen? So that was the answer to question 3. That was at least part of the answer, right? So what's going to happen, of course, is that Ethan recognizes that this situation between Xena and Maddie is kind of coming to a head. So he's sort of in the middle of these two women, and of course one is older than the other, and one is the owner of the home, and the other is an unpaid servant. So definitely an uneven situation in the power struggle, but Ethan is kind of the middle man here. All right, so then we have Xena, who is getting ready to go over to Bethsbridge, okay? And it turns out that this is not an unusual situation, okay? It says, in spite of her sedentary habits, such abrupt decisions were not without precedent in Xena's history. Twice or thrice before, she had suddenly packed Ethan's valise, so that's just a suitcase, a little suitcase, and started off to Bethsbridge, or even Springfield, to seek the advice of some new doctor, and her husband, Ethan, had grown to dread these expeditions because of their cost. Xena always came back, laden with expensive remedies, and her last visit to Springfield had been commemorated by her paying $20 for an electric battery of which she had never been able to learn the use. But for the moment, his sense of relief was so great as to preclude all other feelings. So he's excited because she's leaving town, okay, and taking a suitcase, so she's going to be gone overnight. It says he had no doubt that Xena had spoken the truth in saying the night before that she had sat up because she felt too mean to sleep. So in that sense, it means like I would think mean means average, but it doesn't in this sentence. It means more like not well, like sick, like ill at ease, I guess. And then I think this is an interesting sentence too. It's the end, because there's a colon, so that sets us up for the end of the sentence. Her abrupt resolve to seek medical advice showed that, as usual, she was wholly absorbed in her health. Okay, so I want you to think about Xena's personality. So for these 2 chapters, I had asked you to choose a character, and so I hope you were able to come up with some kind of nuances about the character based on what you read. And then it ends with some kind of acknowledgement again about Xena, and talks about her shooting pains and how they're down to her ankles, and that's why she needs this extra help. And then we find out how old she is, all right? And it says, though she was but 7 years her husband's senior, he was only 28. She was already an old woman. Okay, so not only in how she looks, but in how she thinks and how she behaves. She's an old woman. Okay? And the last thing I think is really interesting, and again, something like we today don't really think too much about. Um, she's talking about the very end of the chapter how she just finished off another bottle of medicine and how you can, she tells Maddie she can reuse the bottle to put pickles in it. So, I mean, we recycle things, I hope, but I mean, we don't recycle medicine bottles usually. I mean, maybe you do. I hope you do. We should all recycle our medicine bottles. Okay, but maybe let's not put pickles in them. Okay, anyway, I'll see you later. Goodbye.